Hello and welcome. You are here with your host Jason Ott, and today on Let's Talk About It, I have a kind of a fun topic I want to get into, really to help people understand the different varieties and extremes of dieting, really. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, working in the health profession with personal training and health coaching, working with special populations, all of that stuff. I've seen trends come and go and come and go, and there's just so much out there. So today I just want to dive into the plant-based movement and the things I agree with and the things I don't agree with, actually, because not everything I agree with that when you look at the bio-individual needs of people. The one thing I do agree with is that this is something that is created, it's proved clinically in peer-reviewed information. I'm going to put out a whole video series on that where I go through just the research, the hard scientific facts. But today I want to talk more about it from a holistic standpoint and kind of get into what is being plant-based. I actually prefer the word plant-heavy, but let's first kind of get into it this way. When we first start talking about this, we assume that, or we villainize foods. So the one thing that I look at, we villainize everything in the world. So what I mean by that is there's good, there's bad, there's right, there's wrong. And it kind of begins to make people think that there's a magic pill, a magic way out, or something that we can do that just eradicates what we have going on. I think part of that is this idea that we're going to find this cure for different diseases. And I don't know that we have really good examples at all in any form of medicine or any form of healthcare of cures of things. We have things that have worked to manage conditions while we work towards it in other ways. But I think the closest thing I've ever found to anyone curing any sort of disease is doing a layered approach. And so what I mean by that is you're using every form of medicine possible. You use your Western medicine, your alternative practices, maybe nutrition, exercise, you get a spiritual practice, and you layer these things. And those are the people that I've met and shook their hands and actually seen them put conditions in remission and reverse dietary disease and mystery illness alike. So when we start talking about these different trends that pop up, it kind of makes us feel like, well, what is right? What is wrong? I mean, most of the time when I'm doing individual coaching sessions with clients, we spend the first session or two debunking myths or beliefs, and sometimes even longer than that, because depending on what someone has learned or has listened to too many opinions of other people and never really established their own beliefs, which is what I want you to do, not necessarily just take in what I'm saying and say that must be fact, but please go into what I'm talking about and research. And when I say research, I mean pick up books. Don't go to Google, because no matter what topic we're talking about with Google, you can go on there and you can find something that's for it, against it, and in the middle. So that's not really a clear representation. You have to spend more time educating yourself on that. So when we get into this, I mean, we have different diets. So I want to talk more about nutrition. So we have different diet trends going all the way back into the 80s, 90s. We had the Atkins diet. That really is what put the weight loss industry on the map. At one point, the Atkins diet, I think it had over 13 or 14% of all of America doing it. No diet has ever done that. We've never had that many people doing one diet at the same time. And we found a couple things with that. First of all, this was completely funded by the weight loss industry. So there was no other ulterior motive as far as longevity, organ health, anything. It was just how fast can we get you to lose weight? And that is not right or wrong. I'm just saying, you guys, when you look at the actual research of these things, you will see that the things that they are looking for is just to see how fast we can get people to lose weight. They're not checking if it is a long-term solution for chronic illness or anything like that. So we have two separate belief systems, okay? This is where we got to start. We have a weight loss industry, which is very dominant, and this came about very shortly after the processed food and after the fast food industries came about, because that was a very unnatural way of living, and many people, because of convenience, said, this is amazing, I'm gonna do this. So they did it, and they started eating that way, and since they didn't have to work for their food, they didn't have to prepare their food, and the food calorie density along with nutritional profile was very low. Calorie density was high, nutrition was low. It led to people gaining weight. So what do we do in America? We come up with solutions. So the weight loss industry came along and said, no, if we eat these foods this way and we stay away from processed foods and then we can lose weight. Along that, through 80s, 90s, 2000s, then we get different beliefs. We have sugar's bad. No, 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 wait. Fat is bad. No, 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 wait. This is bad. That is bad. Gluten's bad. And we get these different beliefs because people go into siloed research, okay? And that's really good. We need reductionism or siloed research where we go down rabbit holes and discover things. But then in order to apply them to our lives, we need to come back to the 30,000-foot view and look at the whole picture of our life and what we want to achieve. And this is what I mean. I want somebody to be comfortable in their body. So when they come to me, I want you to lose your weight, but I do not want to compromise the integrity of your organs or your health long term to get you to lose weight. I have a moral problem with that. Not everyone thinks that deeply. I'm completely aware of that. I look differently at how I'm trying to resolve my clients' issues. And I have nothing wrong with you if you want to achieve weight loss through a certain way. I just want you to understand that there are differences in research and information. And when you understand that, you can make a more educated decision that, okay, I am doing this weight loss program for 6-8 months. I know long-term this is not healthy for me, but I know I can do it. I know I can get the weight off. Then I am going to begin building on whatever. Great. As long as you're educated on what you're going to do, I support you, okay? But as we come up, we get these different trends and we're going through. So the first thing I have to do is, when I'm talking to someone, make them get very clear on what their goals are going to be. As we go, we have these different trends. Recently, we came into this Whole30, then paleo became very big. Now it's keto, and in that mix is another diet, plant-based. So we have these belief systems. Now, I do not subscribe to a specific belief system. I do like a lot of things in the plant-based movement, but there are some things I disagree with because it is not the best healing information. But once you understand where the plant-based information is coming from, you understand why they have to stick to the specifics. So, as we go about this, we see these weight loss trends. Now, paleo was all about performance. It was in the CrossFit community, and it was about eating more clean. I want clean meats, get away from processed things, no more sugar, no more refined foods. We want you to eat more like a caveman, quote unquote. And that's all fine and dandy, but the research wasn't about disease reversal. If you lose weight, if you lose 50 pounds and you're type 2 diabetic and you clean up your diet and you start eating cleaner meats and you reduce your fat content, you're not doing processed foods, and you're eating more fruits and vegetables, you're going to reverse the disease, or at least you're going to drop your medications and lower your A1C. I'm aware of that. But the primary focus of the paleo diet was not to reverse disease. It just wasn't. Okay? It came about because of the CrossFit community. So a secondary or maybe a third of that, yes, you might get those added results, but the primary research and the primary focus is not to reverse disease, and not just a disease, but all disease. Keto came about, and keto claims to put your body into ketosis. I have a couple problems with this. Does it work? Yes. If it's a good keto diet, you're going to eat more vegetables with it. You should have a high amount of vegetables. Most men don't do that. They just hear, I can eat all the protein and fat that I want, so they do that, and that's not good for you because your diet's not balanced. It's not balanced, okay? We need a balanced diet, and that's a big beef I have, no pun intended, with all these dietary programs is they're not balanced. They're skewed one way or another to manipulate the systems and organs in our body to get a specific result, which is usually something of an external body image that we want. Bigger muscles, less body fat. But the reason weight loss and the obesity epidemic came about and doctors started saying we need to lose weight was because of internal organ function health, because of heart disease, because of type 2 diabetes, because of high blood pressure, because of high cholesterol. And when you start learning about the root causes of these diseases, you can see that just merely losing weight isn't necessarily the best for long-term organ function. I hope you're with me so far because I'm going to get a little deep into this. So keto it puts your body into ketosis. Ketosis is a survival mechanism. Back before we had all this food that we could walk outside and go on any corner and get whatever type of food we wanted, we had to work for our food. If we go back 200, 300, 400 years ago, ketosis is a survival mechanism, meaning this. Not everybody was good hunters or fish or could fish well or do that. Or depending on times of famine, because seasons change and depending on where you live, you went bouts of time with no food. So a more efficient way to fuel your body is our primary energy source is always carbohydrate. I'm not talking about white sugar. I'm talking about good carbohydrates from, yes, I'm going to say it, potatoes, from ancient grains, from fruits, from vegetables. That's what our body runs on. When we don't have an adequate amount or when we intentionally restrict them, our body goes into ketosis. And then we use over 95% fat as energy. And this does work, and we can manipulate the systems. I don't want you to think I disagree with that it works to lose weight. It absolutely does. So when we do that, now we actually are using our energy reserves to get us through that famine or lack of food so we can survive. But as soon as if we're 300 years ago and we get a chance and we make a big kill and you're able to eat and there was a good harvest, your body goes right back into using carbohydrates as its main energy source because that's how we were designed. That's why I believe in a balanced diet. So if you're doing keto right, I don't have a big problem with it, but I do want you to understand that we have a couple things that really affect this. So keto is a weight loss diet program. It does work to get you into ketosis, but your organs will take a hit, especially if you don't do it right. There's a thing called fatty liver disease. There's a thing called heart disease, which the sugar industry tries to say it's fat's fault. The fat industry tries to say it's sugar's fault, when really in reality, it is the combination of eating too many fats, having a bad fat ratio in your body, and at the same time having processed foods and flours and sugars all mixing together in your blood, creating this sticky plaque that binds to your vascular system, binds to the walls of your arteries in your heart, and creates plaque, and it builds up and eventually leads you to having a heart attack. Okay, so it's not one or the other. It's the combination of having too much of both. And that is one of the biggest myths. So depending on your health history, if you jump into a diet like this where you're eating 50, 60, 70% of your daily calories in fat, you could be doing more long-term harm than good. Okay, the average American gets less than 2 servings of a fruit or vegetable a day. And this is where my conversation is going to make a shift. It is not a balanced way to eat to only focus on protein, fat, and if you're counting your macros, carbohydrate and just tracking percentages. That is from the weight loss industry, and it negates the other primary systems in your body. And this is what I mean. Everyone is so worried about protein. Protein is a big player in what we call our muscular system, right? Well, we have other systems. We have our nervous system. We have our endocrine system. We have our lymphatic system. We have our immune system. We have our skeletal system, our respiratory system, our digestive system, our reproductive system, our circulatory system. What foods do we eat for that? What foods do we eat for all those other systems? We know protein is for the muscular system. But when you make your diet only fat and only protein, and you negate all the other nutrients from fruits and vegetables that we need, like vitamins and minerals and enzymes and phytochemicals and antioxidants, what are feeding those other systems? And that's where I have a problem. So, with all of this going on, that we manipulate systems to lose weight, because that's what we do in the weight loss industry, and you guys need to see this. It's an industry. It is profiting off of you, and that is fine if you're okay with what you're being sold. So when you start to look at it from more scientific and medical side of things, the weight loss industry knows how to manipulate 1 or 2 systems of your primary 11 systems in your body that you run on. So if you're not eating what foods, if you're focused on just fat and protein and a very little bit amount of fresh foods, how well do you think your immune system is going to function long term? I'm not talking about a year or two when you lose weight. I'm talking about 20, 30, 40 years when you're 50, 60, 70 years old. How well is it going to run? How about digestion? Well, the strongest prebiotic foods, which is our gut bacteria, our microbiome, the things that break down foods, it's part of that. Those come from fruits and vegetables, not protein and fat. Protein and fat do not build up our healthy gut bacteria. They do not. That comes from fresh, living food. Okay, so you kind of get my point. If you go too far in any diet and get too specific, you got to watch out because you might not be balanced. So that's all I'm saying. So when we get over into the plant-based industry, which I'm 90% with it, I see some things as well. So for example, they are looking at it this way. Their primary focus isn't how fast could we get people to lose weight. When this research started really coming out, their focus was how do I reverse heart disease? In 1990, when Dean Ornish proved you could reverse this nation's #1 killer and move plaque out of the heart, the way he could prove this and show that it could happen was by getting on a whole foods plant-based diet. Taking even the healthy fats, he had to remove them out of the person's diet to get the body to let the plaque go out of the walls of the heart and the arteries so that it could clean up and the disease would be reversed. So in that belief, when you get out of the weight loss and performance-based industry and you get into the more clinical nutrition and disease reversal industry, they had to take those away. So back to where I talked about villainizing things, when you are so quick to say that's good, that's bad, without context, without perspective of the big picture of what we're trying to do, then you could really be setting yourself up for failure. So I love the plant-based movement because they've brought a new way of looking at how we're going to eat, which is longevity, which is decreasing our mortality rate, which is if you have a chronic disease, you can make it your primary focus to try to get off of your medications and reverse your condition. Now, the whole foods plant-based movement is just that. It's very similar to paleo in my book, meaning we're not eating processed foods, we're not eating dairy. Well, they don't believe in eating meats, but clean foods and whole foods, as much whole natural food as possible. The only difference is paleo believes in eggs and meats, right? So the whole foods plant-based diet came about and said, Americans are deficient in vitamins. I mean, who here has heard of somebody deficient in vitamin B12, vitamin D, vitamin C? How about bone disease, calcium? You know, these minerals and vitamins we're deficient in creating diseases. We're not getting them from eating more meat. We're not. We're not getting them from eating more fat. We aren't, unless it's an avocado maybe. There's plenty of vitamins and minerals in there, but overall there. And then we're just not. So some of the most carbohydrate-rich foods have all these extra micronutrients, which our bodies are deficient in 2019 in America and throughout the world because we just don't eat those foods anymore. So when you start looking at the plant-based industry and say, okay, cool, so their primary focus is disease reversal, keto's primary focus is weight loss, their research and funding groups are from two separate areas, the same with paleo, the same with Atkins, those are from weight loss. So once you start to separate and say, okay, who am I? I'm medically diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, I have high blood pressure, and I have low energy. What should your focus be? Even if you are 30, 40 pounds overweight, your focus should be on going the route that is about clinical nutrition for reversing disease as the primary focus and the primary funding, because that is what they're there for. So the plant-based movement started decades ago and has finally gained steam because it's not really a sexy sell, because it's changing your complete lifestyle. Socially, people look at you funny, and we're talking about reversing a disease, which natural healing is harder. It can be easy if you like the foods and let go of it, but it can be harder because of all these social pressures and the way modern day living is set up around us. So I prefer plant heavy, and this is why I prefer not just going 100% all in whole foods plant-based, because everybody is different. Everyone's situation is different. And I would be lying right now if I said every person that I've helped get off of medication and help completely reverse their condition or just arrest it, and that's their choice, not to go all the way, I would be lying if I said all of them were 100% whole foods plant-based, because they aren't. I've had many people that still eat quality meats, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, and wild-caught fish. We want them clean as possible. Now, they lower those percentages of animal proteins. They lower their fat percentages to bring in more fresh, whole, raw foods to clean their body out and heal them up, because that's the point of those foods. But I'd be lying. So morally and ethically, I had to look at it and say, okay, I can get behind the belief system and I know what they're trying to do. But I've also seen people reverse disease that way. Now, if you have 90% blockage of an artery in your heart with heart disease, you need to go all in, 100% whole foods plant-based. If you're somebody who's diagnosed with a stage 2, 3, 4 cancer, you need to go all in. If you're somebody who's battled multiple autoimmune conditions for years or even one, you should probably spend 2, 3, 4, 5 months going all in, and then you can transition back and maybe you can start upping some animal proteins and get some of that back in. But you're doing it for a protocol to heal your body and then bring in and find your balance, what works right for you. So as a practitioner helping people, I need to help you find that, because this all or nothing mindset of saying this is good, this is bad, I can't do this and I can do that, I think it leads people into worse situations because they don't think they have the flexibility and the freedom. Now, the plant-based industry, I get it. I get it, because these are doctors, these are clinical researchers, and you can't be out there like me, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a clinical researcher, so I can step outside of the box a bit. But as them, these people that made these discoveries, they have to go off of what clinical research they've found and proved, because they're in the medical community with peer-reviewed information, having fights with licensed professionals, medical professionals. So they need to stay within the box and they can't step out of it. This is my best example. In the plant-based movement, they do not like people juicing, and they do not like people doing smoothies as often because it breaks the fiber down. There are certain doctors that stepped outside of this. Dr. Brooke Goldner, who reversed her lupus and has reversed many people's autoimmune conditions. She's the first person I came across to clinically prove that you can do this. And it's amazing. I've seen her work in my clients. It is great. She steps outside of that. She uses ultra nutrient dense healing smoothies to overload the body with tons of fruits and vegetables, and does that throughout the day. So she sees it a little different in the autoimmune area. But even with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, I have I have two people actually in our Empowered University program right now who have type 2 diabetes, and the plant-based community would ask them to eat more whole foods and let their condition reverse. Dr. Neil Barnard, he has a book and is lobbying against Congress for reversing diabetes better than the American Diabetes Association. He's proved this work clinically, and it does work. But my healing information that I believe in is from Anthony William, the medical medium, and I believe in juicing. I believe in doing smoothies, and I think it cleans the body out faster if you incorporate those things in. And as a result of what I've heard from some of the professionals is, well, if you blend up that fiber, or if you juice, you don't have the fiber, you're going to mess up somebody's blood sugar. Well, I have living proof in our program with these people with type 2 diabetes that that's just not true. I have one person that was almost going to be on insulin, and now she has completely dropped her A1C into the sixes, has got off multiple medications. She is this close to completely putting in remission, and she will, because she is just awesome and she's been crushing it. And it's just not true. She's under medical supervision, and we've watched her condition get better and her blood sugar get better and better. In fact, and she started doing this too when she had her birthday, and she had some celebrations, and we let her live. And this is, again, why I can't go all in and say you have to be 100% plant-based, even though you need to be plant-heavy. Don't get me wrong, you better be 90% plant-based to heal up your body fast. But she would juice after having a meal that was high in processed fats and sugars, because it would take her blood sugar high, and we'd have her juice celery and drink it down, and it would knock her blood sugar all the way back down. Well, that doesn't have the fiber attached to it, so how's it work? And so, due to my experience of working with people over the years, I've actually seen some of these things not hold true for everyone. But I do understand why that community and the researchers, like Dr. Michael Greger in his book, How Not to Die, I do understand when he goes over all of those, he has to stay within what research says because of the industry he's in. That's where my power is. I'm not in those industries, so I don't need to do that. I need to find people who understand the holistic fashion of rebuilding and recovering and helping someone's body heal naturally in the correct environment. So back to what I said. I really want you guys to chew on this. We have 11, depending on where your sources are from, I say 11 major systems in our body that are all interconnected through our skeletal system, which our nervous system runs through that, attaches to our connective tissue and our muscular tissue, and attaches into our organs, and all these systems are interlaced. I want to beat my head against the wall when all people can talk about is protein, 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 because it is a belief system completely ingrained by the weight loss community because they don't know anything else outside of the muscular system. They don't understand how these other systems work. And especially, I'm going to get off on a little tangent, the endocrine system, which is responsible for regulating our hormones in our body. When you hit a high fat, a high protein diet, and that's all you're doing, and you're barely getting any fresh fruits or vegetables in your diet, whether you steam them, blend them, juice them, I don't care, you're not eating them, all those nutrients and those fresh foods are what fuels your endocrine system to stay and work properly. Endocrine system dysfunction is hormone imbalance, is all of the symptoms during menopause and perimenopause, all our thyroid conditions that we're dealing with, parts of our adrenal fatigue. This is all part of this, and we're not giving it the nutrients it needs. And if you look around, it's everywhere with women right now. The hormone boom is through the roof. And the solution in Western medicine is bioidentical hormones, which is a symptom relief. I'm sorry, but it is, because I've had multiple women come to me after being on BioHRT, and they've been on that, and it worked for a while, and then it stopped working, and then it only worked half the time, and then eventually the pellets and stuff don't work, and they come to me and go, I've been doing this for a couple years, what is the root cause? Why do I feel this way? There's no more solutions. And then I start talking to them about actually eating to rebuild the other systems in their body other than the muscular system. The same with bone disease. It's all over. We have so much bone disease, but no one is eating foods that are mineral dense. And I'm not talking about dairy. Dairy has maybe one nutrient that's good for you, and that's calcium. But guess what? It doesn't absorb at a high rate because we aren't a cow. So we don't have the proper digestive enzymes to even take that, break down the peptide of the protein so we can extract the calcium and then absorb it in our body. Harvard did a study, and when we consume that, if I took 8 ounces of milk and drank it and measured the amount of calcium in that milk, when we pee out that liquid, we have more calcium in our urine than that was in that glass of milk, because of the structure of that milk is meant to grow a baby calf up to 1,000-pound bull. No human is meant to be 1,000 pounds. We do not have the digestive system to handle that. Therefore, many people, including my mother and my mother's family, who all have bone disease, grew up on a dairy farm, and they had dairy 2 to 3 times a day, and they all had some sort of a bone disease or hip replacement or something going on, and asked the question, why? Because that does not absorb. So the minerals, you're not going to get it from yogurt, you're not going to get it from dairy. That's why we still have the problems. You got to get it from these fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's exactly what the plant-based movement is proving. I just think that we need to understand and be self-aware of who we are, what our medical history is, what our hereditary history is, because genetics, there's some truth to genetics, but it's more about epigenetics. So we need to know what's hereditary, because genetics and being hereditary are 2 separate things in my opinion. So we need to know what that looks like so then we can make accurate decisions on what we need to do with our future. We need to eat for all systems in our body. We need to correct the imbalances, and no one in America is deficient in protein. No one's deficient in fat. No one's deficient in carbohydrates. No one is deficient in total calories, because we are the most obese population in the world. But if we start looking at what are Americans actually deficient in, well, we have a very high cancer rate, autoimmune rate. That means we have nutrients that are supposed to be fueling our immune system, which we aren't getting because we have the highest in the world. We have bone disease through the roof, so we're not getting proper minerals, not just calcium, but all the other minerals that make up our bones. B12, we're all deficient in that. Vitamin D, you can blame it on the sun, which that's a part of it. We're not getting outside, but it's still vitamins, and we're deficient in them. We are deficient in these micronutrients. We are not deficient in macronutrients. And when you start to see this separation, that there's a different way to eat for clinical nutrition to reverse disease and a different way to eat for performance and a different way to eat for weight loss, you begin to see the same is true for exercise. If I'm a marathon runner, I exercise a certain way. If I got hurt, I exercise a certain way. If I'm a football player, I exercise a certain way. The same is to be said for diet. Okay, if I'm a bodybuilder, I eat a certain way. If I'm a college athlete, if I'm 65 years older or more, I eat a certain way. One size does not fit all, and I know that makes your life a little bit more confusing, but when you start to understand that you need to know exactly what you want and what your why is and what you want to achieve, you will then be able to accomplish your health goals better. So I believe in plant-heavy eating. Plant-heavy eating means majority of my diet will be consisted of whole foods from fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, okay? You can eat some lean meats. I don't. I'm 100% plant-based, mainly because I like to prove the point that you can still be strong, you can still have muscle. I don't do protein shakes. I don't eat proteins. I eat plants, and I still have plenty of muscle. I still deadlift over 300 pounds, and I do that on purpose to prove there's a lot more that we need to learn about nutrition than what we've actually studied, because people don't research plants. They just don't. Okay, so when you start looking at that, I believe more like the blue zones. I really mirror my life after the blue zones. If you don't know what the blue zones are, you need to look into them. But these populations live the longest in the world, are functionally more healthy than any other population or cultures in the world. There's little pockets: Loma Linda, California; Sardinia, Italy; Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica. These pockets of people, they have the highest rates of centenarians, people to live to be 100. And these aren't people living to be 100 in a nursing home. They are living in their home, sleeping in their own bed. So I mirror what I do and how I eat and how I live after those people, because my why is to live as long as I possibly can and remain as healthy as I possibly can. Because I've watched my mother die before retirement, and I've seen too many other people not make it to retirement because of a disease they could have prevented if they ate better and exercised. Or once they do make it to retirement, they are on so many medications and so sick the last 10 years of their life is just barely fighting to take a breath, and then they eventually pass away and they never get to enjoy retirement. So I'm personally making a decision now in my 30s that I'm going to live and go in a certain way that stacks the deck in my favor. And if I do that, I'm setting myself up to have the best chance to live my best life. There's tons of proof and tons of research in this. The blue zones also, they model 10% or less. That's really what I've come to the conclusion of. 90% of their diet is whole foods. They're eating from their gardens. They're not eating from packages. They're not drinking pop. They're not eating fast food. They are eating whole foods. And then on celebrations, they do eat meats. They do have some goat's milk. They do have some of these things, but it's not a daily staple. They're not doing it 2, 3, 4 times a day. They are eating tons of whole foods, and then they move. They do not overeat. They have big life purpose. They have spiritual practice. They understand how to not let themselves become stressed because they are so grateful for the days that they do have. So that's how I choose to live my life. And because I found herbalism and because I found these people, I eventually found the medical community that is proving the more plants you eat, the less disease you have. And that's really what I want to leave you with. Everyone needs to eat more plant heavy because it's going to balance out their diets. The statistics in America show we do not eat enough fresh foods. And when we start to do that, our lives change, okay? So, moving forward to wrap this thing up here, guys, eat more plants. That's all I'm really getting at. Find the balance for you. Don't think you need to follow an exact belief system unless you have something very specifically medically diagnosed that you're looking to reverse. Then I would say you need to follow the very specifics that are in these heart disease and autoimmune books and all of this stuff. Otherwise, you need to find your balance. You need to find your why and eat a plant-heavy diet. As always, if you need anything, please email me, Jason at Empowered Prevention. Reach out on all of my handles at Empowered Prevention on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, you name it. Get a hold of me. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help you out. If you get any questions or anything you need, do not hesitate. Thank you all very much and have a healthy day.